All right, welcome into the 16th episode of the Ohio State of Mind podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Chen. On the other side with me is Josh Keeley. And Josh, lots of Buckeye news as always, even in the offseason. Plenty of news in the offseason. The biggest thing that is happening with Buckeye Nation is Bill O'Brien. Obviously, O'Brien was hired as the Ohio State new offensive coordinator just last month. But now it looks like he is most likely, nothing's been announced, but most likely taking the Boston College head coaching job. And this hurts clearly the bottom line. But again, if you don't know his backstory, his son suffers from a rare disease where he has a seizure every morning. He wakes up and has a seizure. And the best medical care that he can get for that is in Boston. He's a Boston native. And you know what? Family first, man. And I get it. It sucks for Buckeyes, and because we expected so much from Bill O'Brien. But you know what? Again, family first, man. I get it. As being a new father, if my son was having issues like that, like everything comes for that would come first for me for literally everything. So, I mean, what are your takes on the potential of O'Brien leaving? Obviously, nothing's been said yet, no official word, but it does look like it.
Yeah, I think we're both hearing from different sources that Bill O'Brien is out. That's one of the we've heard that that his son is one of the main reasons, the biggest reason, which is fine. It's what am I supposed to say? I can't say something negative about that, right? Your son's sick. The best, you got to do what you got to do. Dennis Dodd tweeted out a couple of days ago too. Another factor is that he feels that there's more long-term security at Boston College too. He can go there, sign a contract for 3 or 4 years. But if he goes to Ohio State, his timeline is basically tied to the success of Ryan Day. And as we know, it's no secret that if Ryan Day doesn't have a good season, he's out. So he could potentially be in Columbus for 1 year, which is kind of a turnoff. Now, in my opinion, I think that that's a little bit of an exaggeration.
I think so too.
You know what I mean? Like he's going to have a lot of toys to play with. I don't think that those things are mutual. I think that those Ryan Day and Bill O'Brien and the offensive success is mutually exclusive, right? So I think that I kind of disagree with the Dennis Dodd thing, but that might be my Ohio State bias coming through. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. That's hard to say. It's a bummer. At the end of the day, it's a bummer. I understand that Ohio State's really, really trying to keep him to stay.
Right.
So if that means writing a bigger check, I say do it. Obviously, I was on the show. We were on the show together a couple weeks ago, and I was jumping from the rooftop. I think I even said Bill O'Brien, his addition was probably the biggest, most influential, important addition of the offseason. That was ahead of Will Howard, Judkins. I mean, everybody. I thought that, Jeremiah Smith, I think it's
Caleb Downs,
mental to have a guy with that kind of resume in the coaching room. And, we're seeing a lot of the guys that we were talking about previous, they got new jobs. So, one of the reasons that this is going to be upsetting is not only have I had my heart set on Bill O'Brien and what he brings to the table, but I don't know where they're going to go from here. And my understanding is that some of the people that they've reached out to, they're not. I mean, one of the names that keeps popping up is Kenny Guyton, and that's a name that I don't think it's a bad name. It's just not the resume and influence, and it's not what we're seeing with Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien's just got a hell of a resume, man. Of course, that's why he's getting the head coaching gig at Boston College. So. But it's a bummer. Yeah. It would really set us back.
It would. I think Guyton fits more along the lines of a positional coach at the current moment. He's, he does have NFL experience with the Detroit Lions. We saw. I don't know if you saw this. Corey.
Kenny Guyton?
No. Corey Dennis. Corey. What I was going to say is Corey Dennis took an offensive analyst position with Utah today.
Yes.
And that position is open. They haven't filled it. They have one position remaining for an assistant on the staff. There's a lot of chatter that they're trying to convince James Laurinaitis to be okay with being elevated. Laurinaitis, young children, doesn't want to be in the road a lot. He currently is on the road due to an NCAA rule, which allows him to do that because Ohio State has an opening. But yeah, I think Guyton would fit more along the lines of, the quarterback's coach. I think that would fit what we need. He doesn't really have play calling experience, even though he has been, bouncing around the coaching, world, but he just doesn't have that. And that's what the Ohio State offense needs. They need that veteran voice because we've seen already what happens when you get a new offensive coordinator in Brian Hartline. And this is no knock on Brian Hartline at all. It's just the fact that he, in a room with Ryan Day, his voice doesn't carry as much as a Bill O'Brien's would, or someone else who has that massive amount of experience. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if they go back to square one. I know you've talked a lot about Jason Candle. I think that name would make sense, and to go and retread that. Obviously, we don't know if that's really the case though, because O'Brien still hasn't. Nothing's been said. Nothing's just
right.
But if they were, I mean, I like Jason Campbell. I think that that would be a good move for him. Although it'd be a short-term move, though. I don't think that he would stay long. I think 1-2 years, and then he's probably off to a head coaching gig somewhere else, just to get that big-time experience. So I don't know where they go if he's going.
So there's
nobody knew that Bill O'Brien was really a candidate, right? Like,
yes,
nobody said, "Oh, Bill O'Brien, that's the guy." Right? It was just kind of like out of the blue that they hired him. So could we see that again? I mean, Chip Kelly is looking like he wants out, but they're tied together because they've been in the same room before, and we've seen this happen. We've seen Urban Meyer go with his buddies. How did that turn? It didn't turn out all that great. So I'd like to see, Ryan Day, if O'Brien actually ends up leaving, I'd like to see Ryan Day kind of say, all right, I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm not going to go with someone that is going to be a yes man. I want someone who's going to fight. Yeah. And that's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. It's not. I'm not bashing Kenny Guyton. I want to be very clear. Maybe a month ago or 2 months ago when we originally had this conversation, I would be more excited about Kenny Guyton. But now that I know that a guy like Bill O'Brien's out there with head coaching experience, play calling experience, experience coaching the NFL, an older guy, that excites me. Now that I know that that's out there, that's what I want. So Kenny Guyton's pretty much off the table. In my eyes, going back and hiring a guy like Kenny Guyton after having a guy like Bill O'Brien in the office is a bad idea. It's a bad idea. It goes against what he was trying to do. And it's really a shame too, because this is the second offseason where I feel like Ryan Day, here's the thing about Ryan Day. And again, I bash him on every week. Every week I say something negative about Ryan Day.
Always.
But the biggest problem is that he's aware of, he's like that kid that knows that he's not supposed to do something but keeps doing it. Right. Last year in the press conference before the game, the playoffs, or after the playoffs, whatever it was, he said he needed an offensive coordinator. He needs to be able to step back and be more the CEO. And he got backed into a corner. I'm not going to blame him entirely for this, although it's his job. He got backed into a corner because he felt like there was outside pressure that was going to offer Brian Hartline a job, somewhere. Right. The rumor was Northwestern. There was a rumor of Cincinnati, yada yada yada. And he felt he had to promote Brian Hartline. That was a bad move. I know you said you didn't want to bash Brian Hartline. I will bash Brian Hartline. He's not an offensive coordinator. He's not an offensive coordinator, and that doesn't make him a bad coach.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't make him a bad recruiter. All those things he does really well, but he's 100%. Not an offensive coordinator. And he could grow into it. You're right. He could grow into it. But right now, he's not, and this is a national championship caliber team. So we need a guy who's an offensive coordinator. And we're seeing it again. So that was what happened last year. This year, we're seeing it again. Ryan Day said something. Ryan Day did something. And now he's getting backed into a corner again. So it's really going to be interesting to see how he reacts. I got a lot, despite what I say about him, I got a lot of faith in him. He looks like a man this offseason that understands his faults. And that's half the battle, is understanding your weaknesses.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. I like Jason Candle too. I think that we talked about that. The problem with that though is I believe that he's basically ready to rock and roll. It's like he's made peace with it and he's moved on. That's the problem when you start to get to this part of the offseason.
Right.
And the Corey Dennis departure, goodbye. I don't know. You know what I mean?
We're good with that.
Yeah, I was kind of making fun of it last week that he got demoted because basically I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't for his daddy-in-law being Urban Meyer, he would have been shipped out a while ago. So
Probably.
if Utah wants him, Utah can have him.
Sure.
That whole coaching shuffle is going to be real interesting. And again, I know I crap on Ryan Day a lot, but it feels like he's aware of what he needs to do. So I'm not going to panic yet. It's just a bummer that we might lose Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, no, it's a huge bummer. It looked like we were set up for, an offense that's just going to kind of be awesome. I mean, let's be real here. The talent's not leaving. So that's a plus, right? The talent's still there. It all comes down to being able to utilize that talent at a high level. And we all believe that Bill O'Brien was going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
We don't want someone to come in here and try and fit, a square peg into a round hole. That's just not going to work. It's just not. We need somebody who understands how to utilize this talent. And everything that we heard about what Bill O'Brien was doing, how he's learning the terminology of Ryan Day's offense, how he's sitting down and saying, you know what, everybody, clean slate. I don't care whether you played last year, whether you didn't play, everyone's got a clean slate. You can start pretty much from square one with me, and we're going to go forward with that. I want someone who comes in with that kind of attitude. This team needs that kind of veteran leadership at that position to fight back against Ryan Day and say, hey, this is the wrong play call. And I see it. Let me do it. And then you see the results. And then Ryan Day then says, oh, okay, I can back. Because I think he loves calling plays. And let's be real here. It was really hard for him to give that up. But I am 100% agreeing with you about the fact that Ryan Day understands that he needs to be more of that CEO type of head coach. He's got to dole out responsibilities. Yeah. He's got to understand that he can't do it all. He's got to do other things. And this offseason, we've seen him start to do those other things, which is like so much more progress than we've seen in previous, with the transfer portal, with the recruiting, being able to keep Jeremiah Smith and Edric Houston on signing day. Like both of those guys, it looked like they were going to flip in the early signing period, and he kept them. And those are like two cornerstones of the recruiting class. So I really think that Ryan Day is starting to learn and starting to understand what he needs to do. I mean, look, and I hate to continually compare it to the Michigan experience, but, Jim Harbaugh, it took him a long time to figure it out. I mean, maybe, there's probably some cheating involved. There's a little minute portion of that would be the whole advanced scouting scandal. But on the other hand,
let's not forget the COVID year really helped that roster.
COVID, definitely. I mean,
if Ryan Day is the next Jim Harbaugh, we got problems.
Right.
Completely separate.
And that's not what we want to see, clearly, because Ohio State recruits at an extremely high level, completely different than what Michigan's recruiting at. So yes, there's differences there, but I think that being patient with a guy, having the understand that he's got that base, he's one of the you get rid of him, and who's going to come in and be better than him? Right?
Kellen DeBoer.
There's a few guys, but in all reality, DeBoer's not leaving it.
He's not leaving Alabama now, but he would have left. But that's. I mean, it is what it is. Ohio State's done with. You can't fire Ryan Day right now. I understand that. No, I'm okay with that. I'm in it. I'm in it. We're all in it, and that's fine. But the whole patience is a virtue and all that, and compared to the Jim Harbaugh thing, I don't believe that not one bit. I just don't believe it at all. But a lot of these coaches, especially at the day and age with the NIL and the transfer portal, these coaches are hitting in year 3 and 4. Right. And they're not given the roster that Ryan Day was handed over. But it is what it is. Sure. And as far as what you said earlier about a guy being there for the short term, like 1 year and out, I'm cool with that. That means that they did a great job. Right. So they hire Bill O'Brien or Jason Candle or whoever it is, and they're here for 1 year and they go. That's fine. That's back to what you were saying about the play calling. It's not like Ryan Day has to give it up completely. Right. Maybe he's going to have a say in all the vital downs, right? Just like Urban Meyer had a say on third downs and the red zone. He's still the head coach. Right. He just needs someone to give them the 2 cents so where he can think about it, right? Because right now he's the only opinion in the room that matters, and that's the issue. And I think that having a guy like Bill O'Brien, Ryan Day's not a bad coach.
No.
I don't think he's a bad coach. I've never said I mean, maybe I have said he was a bad coach, but it's the problem is that he's learning to be a head coach at Ohio State, and Ohio State's not a place to learn. That's the issues what that I have with the current situation. And Michigan's going to be dealing with the same thing with Sherrone Moore. I don't think Sherrone Moore's a bad coach. I think Sherrone Moore's a great coach. I think that was the right hire, but they're going to suck.
Oh,
it's not going to be his fault. And they're going to have to be patient, right? That's going to be learned on the job.
I mean, they're not going to be really bad, but like 8-4 is probably what we're looking at next year. I mean, right? I mean, it kind of has to be, right?
It's not necessarily this season that they're going to be bad. I mean, they got what one guy that's committed for the upcoming. He's got to replace all these coaches. It's just
right.
I don't know. I don't know if you're going to see them suck immediately, but there's definitely going to be a slow burn. You know what I mean?
I mean, Jesse Minter got officially announced as the defensive coordinator today. We assumed that Jay Harbaugh was going to follow him. He actually ended up with Seahawks. And then also today, Mike Elston, the defensive line coach of Michigan. It's like it hasn't been official yet, but it looks like he is leaving to join Harbaugh in Los Angeles. So there's, again, it goes back to right. Yeah. The strength of the right. So like you're looking at him gutting his former program. And this is something that we talked about last week. So if you're interested in hearing our thoughts about that, and it rolls over with Elston as well, go back and listen to last week's podcast. But, again, back to Ryan Day, though, he needs that veteran voice. And, at the end of the day, if he can't find it, we're back pretty much at where we were for this past season. And and with this roster, you can't have that. This roster is set up to win a championship. This roster is set to, win the Big Ten, beat Michigan, win the game, get a first round bye. No, this year he doesn't. He doesn't. I mean, you look at, what aside from Georgia, what other roster across the country is as good up and down as Ohio State?
I mean, and it's a weak schedule. Ohio State has a very favorable schedule.
Yeah. I mean, they really have two tough games, tough games at Oregon, and Michigan at home. Those are
Michigan
the games.
Is going to be absolutely depleted. So
right.
He's got no excuse. He should win the Big Ten.
He should. But we'll see. I don't. The Bill O'Brien thing is so huge. If he does end up leaving, it's just it's like a punch in the gut. It's like watching Ohio State basketball. It's like a punch in the gut. You're just like you're gonna watch because you're a Buckeye fan, but you just kind of know something bad's gonna happen. And it's just you just have to. He has to have that veteran leadership, the offensive coordinator position. He just has to. That puts this team above what it is right now. And Bill O'Brien would have done that or could still do that. But, here we are talking about, him potentially leaving and, the ramifications of it is huge. It's monstrous. And just Ryan Day needs to find somebody who will be similar to that, similar experience who understands how to do, it at a high level. You can't go out.
It's rare. It's rare.
That's what I'm saying, right? It's hard, and especially at this time now because a lot of teams have already made their decisions, and a lot of coaches have already kind of said, "All right, I'm good. I'm good where I'm at," or I've made their move, or and all that. So it puts the Buckeyes in an interesting position because they're going to have to scramble again, and we can't have another Brian Hartline situation. We can't. You just can't.
No, and I think that. One good thing, though, is that when we were having previous discussions, I kind of talked about how, eventually this whole thing is going to – so you're already seeing, the program was at, let's say it was at a 10, national championship caliber. Ryan and then Urban Meyer left, and it slowly decreased to where they're not even winning the Big Ten. They're not even beaten – they're not – no one views them as a real threat to Michigan.
No.
I don't think that they're going to get any lower than that with the way the NILs come together, that this feels like a team that even if they lose both those games next year, I really hope they don't. I'm not saying that. If they lose both, if they don't win the Big Ten next year, I'm going to be saying that Ryan Day needs to be fired. But I'm saying the good thing is now that the NIL has got their shit together, I don't think that the next coach or whoever comes in is going to have to basically build back up a roster, kind of like what Tressel had to do, if that makes sense. I mean, because that's really the last time that there had to be, I don't want to use the word overhaul because it's college football, and God knows John Cooper did a great job recruiting, but but Tressel did have to come in there and do something. You know, it was falling apart a little bit, right?
It took him a season. He won it in year two.
True. Yeah,
he won it in year two. I mean, Urban as well. You know, like early. He quickly, turned it around, undefeated in the first year. That should have been a national championship season if it wasn't for Gene Smith being a dumbass and saying, "Oh, we're going to take the sanctions the next year." Well, why wouldn't you take it that year? You know, when you're having it's a clear coaching change. You know, huge, horrible, absolutely horrendous, because that's you're looking at most likely potentially back-to-back titles right there. And another lost season for Ohio State. I mean, how many of them have they had in the past 20 years? When you could probably say they should have won at least 3 to 4 other national championships in that time frame, but they only have 2. It's been 10 years since the last one. And
I guess so. I get maybe even back then, reflecting on that statement, I probably was overreacting because, like you're pointing out, Ohio State is Ohio State. They're the big dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're whatever I guess it's like, the Apple losing stock where it's still the big dog. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of rebuild or a lot of rehash, or it's going to be an issue for the next coach. But if Ryan Day doesn't win the Big Ten, he's so out. He's so out.
No, and I agree with you on this scale, right? Like Urban left and the program's at a 10, and Ryan Day probably is at an 8 right now. I mean, still making the college football playoffs, still contending for Big Ten titles, but not winning college football playoff games. Like getting their asses handed to them against an average at best Missouri team, this past season. It's just like, he's got all the tools that he needs to succeed. He's just not doing it. And he did it early on in his career, which is odd because, you expect like all of that to just kind of flow over, and it didn't,
Well, I think the culture slowly changed.
I think
first of all, I think that Urban Meyer placed a huge emphasis on Michigan, obviously, as we know. Ryan Day simply does not, right? We know that Urban is very, I don't want to say I don't want to use the word mean, but aggressive.
Psycho?
Yeah, he is. He's
psychotic.
He's there's not a lot of people that have a lot of positive things to say about Urban Meyer, but those things are also what made him a great coach. Ryan Day is a player's coach. He's a people person. I mean, those guys would have Emeka Egbuka, Travion Henderson. If Urban Meyer was still the head coach, those guys are not staying.
100%.
They're not staying. Yeah, 100%.
Agreed.
So Ryan Day. So some of those things that the reasons why Ryan Day is failing are not completely bad reasons to fail. He just has to find a way to balance that out, right? He has to bring that culture to the next level where it was, where they hate the team up north, yada yada yada. But that's the biggest difference. I mean, you can just kind of that, and it just kind of slowly faded away, right?
Yeah, it has, and I think that everything that they've done in this offseason has shown that he can do it. And like you said, the NIL getting their shit together played a huge part into it. Because everyone's like, oh, 14 million, they spent it all on these transfers and everything. Yeah, the transfers got some money, but the most of it went to the players returning. Those players wouldn't
100%.
return if the players wouldn't return if the NIL wasn't there. Because they know they could say, all right, I can hold off in the NFL for a year, still get paid to stay in Columbus, and then go out and make money in the NFL, make as much or more. And again, it all comes down to him making the right decision if Bill O'Brien leaves. And this is all a bunch of ifs, because this is obviously we don't know what the hell is going to happen.
Right.
Some of the stuff that I've seen is that he was going to be, named the head coach on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. I don't know if that's the case. We've seen a lot of conflicting reports on a lot of this. Another one is that they're going to conduct interviews over the weekend. A bunch of other coaches. It's just hard to piece together what actually is happening, because there's multiple reports out there. We don't know really what is going on. Bill O'Brien hasn't publicly said anything, which I think tends to, you have to think that he's at least pondering the idea of taking that job.
Oh,
And
100%.
the James is a great hospital, but it's renowned for its cancer research.
Yeah.
And again, if his son can get the best care in Boston, makes sense. It really does. And it kind of sucks because, it looked like Ohio State was lining up for a run at a title. And I don't know if, whoever would be the new hire would kind of push those. I still think regardless, this roster is ready to compete for a title. It might just not be quite as favorable if someone else aside from Bill O'Brien is calling the plays.
I think that there are options out there, right? We can't think of them, but
Right.
there are maybe that's the homework that we'll do for next week or whatever. But you can replace Bill O'Brien.
Mhm.
It's not ideal. It's not what we
No.
want to do, but you can
Right.
replace him. And the likelihood of him leaving is very high. They're clearly negotiating, right? My understanding is that Boston College kind of panicked when Jeff Hafley left, and they were wanting to hire Bill O'Brien as basically a Band-Aid short-term solution. And he's like, no, if I'm coming in, I want a long deal. Right. And that's how a lot of these coaches are. They're not wanting the 3-4 year deals anymore. They're wanting the 6, 7 year, 8 year deals now. Right. And that's probably what the discussion's coming down to. And Ohio State's paying him an awful lot. Right. So he's leaving. He would be leaving to go to Boston College, not necessarily because of the money, but because of the
100%. Yeah. No, the money, I don't think the money has anything to do with it at all. He's made plenty of money in his career.
I think that the priority, I do think on the priority list, it is lower than like you said, stability, family, all that stuff. And I can't blame him for it. I'm not going to be mad about it. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things. So
no, it's like sombering.
I'm not mad at Ryan Day for it either.
No,
right?
No,
for as much crap as I talk about Ryan Day, he made the right hire. This is what happens, right? When you hire candidates, they leave.
Right. Like he leaves to go home. He leaves to be closer to better medical care for his son. Like it makes sense. Yeah. I get it. It would suck clearly if that was the case. But here we are talking about the potential that he's leaving, and it's unfortunate because it looked like he was really going to bring that offense to the next level, and get us to championship caliber. Because you look at it like the defense is there. Like Jim Knowles did a great job, and year 1 was a little bit iffy. Year 2 was so much better. Year 3 is like this coming season's looking like they're going to be elite. One of the best defenses in the country. Just like better than last year. I mean, in this past season, they were a top 10 defense as well. So, I mean, that side of the ball, I don't think there's really any concerns for anybody. Like, I mean, you look at the returning talent. I mean, you maybe say linebacker, right? But like, they'll make it work. They'll figure it out.
I have no concerns for linebacker.
They'll figure a way. I'm just saying, like, if you did have like any concerns with the defensive side, that's where it is. It's a linebacker because your defensive line is set. You got Sawyer Tuamoloau. You got Tyleek in there. You got plenty of rotational pieces as well. Linebackers just, Cody Simon's great. We all like him. We talked about this last week as well. But we'd like to see a little bit better, consistent production out of that group. Tommy Eichenberg was great, but was he really as good as, his tackle numbers said he was? A lot of his tackles, like he didn't make those impact tackles. He was getting a lot of his tackles were 5, 6, 7 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. And, great. You got 10, 12 tackles, but were they like important tackles? Not really. And then the secondary, I mean, that secondary right now, Tim Walton doing his job on the recruiting trail. We're going to talk about that in a little bit as well. But that again, defensively, there's no questions really. There's really no questions, and it's just offensively, you just want that play caller that will stand up against Ryan Day and say, "Hey, man, this is not going to work. We got to run this. We got to try this." Make those second half adjustments because we didn't see a lot of second half adjustments this past year, right? It was just like throw the ball to Marvin, like that's not, and maybe that was a little bit. Maybe that's a little bit of Kyle McCord too. Like, let's be real here. But again, like
I think
some of the things that they did right before just didn't work.
I think that I don't know how to. I think that Ryan Day. I am blaming Ryan Day. I am blaming Ryan Day because he brought it. At the end of the day, it's Ryan Day's fault, right? because he
It's
brought
his
in
coaching
Kyle
staff.
McCord. Kyle
Right.
McCord was not prepared. But I do
His
believe
staff,
that
his players.
yes, but I do believe that the lack of adjustment that we saw in the second half has less to do with Ryan Day's inability to call a game and more to do with his distrust for Kyle McCord. And again, I'm not blaming Kyle McCord. This is college football. That is Ryan Day's fault for having
Right.
a quarterback that he recruited, that he chose,
Right.
that he doesn't have trust in. That's his issue. I'm still blaming Ryan Day, but I do believe that having a guy like Will Howard, who again, I want to be very, very clear because this topic is a very hot topic in the community. I don't think Will Howard is a first-round quarterback. I don't think he's a Heisman finalist. Okay, but what he does is he doesn't make mistakes, and he is a very intelligent leadership-driven quarterback, and that is going to allow Ryan Day to be more confident in his play calls in the second half this upcoming season. Now, whether that ends up with great results or not, I don't know. But I do believe that Ryan Day felt like he couldn't do certain things. So I don't want to completely blame his play calling, but I will completely blame him for the lack of development in any of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on with that because you're right. He's got handpicked quarterbacks that, have been in the program for multiple years. You're looking at McCord and Brown, and you can't fault anything for Keenholz, what he did in the bowl game, because let's be real here. He's a true freshman, only been in the program for a couple of months. And, he's a guy that didn't graduate early, didn't get that extra spring practices. And he clearly wasn't ready. And on top of that, the offensive line played like garbage as well. So you can't really judge a player off of one game when you have those kind of circumstances. But yeah, 100%. I agree with you on it.
And I don't want to spend too much time on this either because the time has kind of passed. But someone reached out on Twitter because I said something about the lack of development on Twitter, and someone reached out and said, "Well, Kyle McCord wasn't really quote unquote his guy. His guy for this season was supposed to be Quinn Ewers." And my rebuttal to that is, first of all, no. Okay,
right.
Kyle McCord was a 5-star recruit. So if you can't win or develop a 5-star recruit that you brought in, that's on you. This is not Akron where a guy isn't academically eligible or leaves at the last second. Second of all, Quinn Ewers was in the building. This is not a situation where Quinn Ewers, got hurt towards ACL or, something terrible happened and he couldn't throw the football anymore. Quinn Ewers was in the building and they did nothing to try to keep him. Now, whether that I'm not blaming, I'm not completely saying that was the wrong move. I'm just saying, if your argument is that Quinn Ewers was the guy, Ryan Day showed no interest in Quinn Ewers at all. He wouldn't even travel. Quinn Ewers wasn't even traveling to the away games, dude. So if that's your argument, you really need to take a step back and try to figure out, where you've gone wrong, because he let Quinn Ewers walk away, and Quinn Ewers ended up being a pretty damn good quarterback, as we're all seeing now.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's probably going to be one of the top quarterbacks selected in next year's draft.
Yeah.
Obviously, staying for another season in Texas, and everything that he did this past year. Texas went to the College World Cup.
Oh, he was great. Yeah,
I mean, they were a very good team, and
he's fairly inconsistent, but when he slings it, he slings it
well. Oh yeah, I mean, he throws one of the prettiest deep balls in college football right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say that what his skill set wouldn't have worked here. And I think it would have. I 100%
Hell yeah.
would have.
Hell yeah.
But again, you were right though. There's writing on the wall that said that Ryan Day really didn't care whether or not he was still on the roster.
Exactly.
Now, part of that probably did have to do with some NIL, which they've obviously fixed. But on the other hand, he still didn't give him the time of day that he needed. You have to coddle some of those 5-star guys who are used to playing. I mean, Ewers played, he stepped foot on that, his high school campus and was immediately the dude, right? Like, you go to college and you have to sit, that's a completely different atmosphere.
He wasn't even traveling, man.
Right.
Wasn't even traveling. You know what I mean? That's
right.
He was staying at home with the walk-ons. That's not cool.
Right. Especially the number one player in the country. Yeah. You got to have him travel, even if it's just to get experience traveling and understanding how you go about your business when you go on a road trip. You have to get those guys, mentally prepared. It's not even just the physical part. The mental part plays a huge aspect, especially the quarterback position. And he didn't do it right. He obviously didn't. And that obviously hurt this past season.
Yeah.
But again, you're right, though. 5-star guy in McCord, didn't develop him, and he looked like an average at best quarterback. I mean, look, he ended up transferring to Syracuse. Like, okay, maybe if he went to, an SEC school or, Washington or Oregon or something, like, because those teams need quarterbacks, right? If he went to one
I
of
think
those
that
schools, you'd think like, okay, maybe there's something else to this, but he went to Syracuse. Like, come on here.
I think that that's probably the correct tier for him, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because I think that that's going to be a school that is immediately going to allow him to be the starter for 3 years, and they're going to sling the ball around a lot. Honestly, I was thinking like Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? And
Right.
that which is another ACC school, right? I was thinking
mid school, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because he showed a lot. Like he's got a little bit of Kenny Pickett to his game. You know what I mean? Like I kind of thought that, so I envisioned him in a pity for whatever. I'm just saying, like I don't think that the SEC. I don't think that because some of those guys they do that, and that's not the best route, right? If you can't play at Wisconsin like Graham Mertz, maybe you shouldn't go to Florida. Now it worked out for him,
right.
But you get my point. Jack Miller shouldn't have gone to Florida, right? Because that they were gonna, he couldn't do it, and they quickly moved on, and now he's retired from football, which is a bummer, right? So look, Tate Martell traveled to where did he transfer to Miami first? Bad move. You couldn't
Miami,
play Ohio
State, and then somewhere else, and then
he sat the bench at UNLV too. Yeah,
yeah, I know, right? I mean, that's a whole different story as well. But it's just disappointing because that was his dude. He handpicked him, and
yes.
But again, on the other hand, he also handpicked C.J. Stroud, and look how that turned out. So,
yeah, we got all those champions. Oh wait.
But that's not on CJ Stroud, though.
No, not at all.
CJ Stroud on that. That's on the defense.
No, I'm not blaming.
That's on. He did. When your offense scores 40-something points a game, it's one. Excuse me. It's one of the top offenses in the country, and your defense can't hold average opponents to under 35. I mean, come on.
I blame Ryan Day for that. I don't even know if I blame the defense. I mean, because we saw what CJ. First of all, we see what CJ Stroud can do with the Texans, and we saw what CJ Stroud could do against Georgia. And that CJ Stroud against Georgia was completely different than CJ Stroud the rest of the season. And I'm not gonna lie. I like a lot of guys on the Ohio State beat, but the amount of guys on the Ohio State beat that act like they knew that CJ Stroud was going to be a better quarterback than Bryce Young is absolutely asinine. Okay, if you thought that's fine, if you thought that because they were very close, 1 and 2, that's fine. But the confidence at which everybody's acting like I knew he'd be better than Bryce Young. I know you didn't know he would be better than Bryce Young. You thought he could be better than Bryce Young, but Bryce Young put Alabama on his back. CJ Stroud didn't do that. He never did that. He never did that Ohio State, and I think that a lot of that was because Ryan Day didn't let him. So I don't blame CJ Stroud, but we saw the ramifications of what Ryan Day had. Ryan Day had maybe the best quarterback in Ohio State history and won nothing with him.
Yeah.
Possibly held his ass back. I mean, if Urban Meyer was CJ Stroud's head coach, would he have been the number 1 pick? Maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he might have we might have a title in there.
That's all I'm saying. He was the number 1
against Georgia. But again, the defense choked. They had a 13-point lead in the fourth quarter. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Again, no, I know they're not completely, but I'm just saying,
Again, it's I think that Ryan Day realized that he needed to fix the defense, and he fixed the defense, and then he had problems on the other side of the ball.
Yes,
his sole focus after that Georgia loss was we need to fix the defense. The defense needs to get fixed. Not Jim Knowles. That was the right move.
Yep.
I have confidence that Ryan Day will, if Bill O'Brien leaves, will find the right guy for his team. It's just again, it's disheartening that O'Brien would leave, but. Again, that's the world of coaching. That's college football in a nutshell, right there. Guys leave. It is what it is, and good assistants are watched by other programs, and that's something that we've touched on before as well. I want to see more of our assistants leave and go and take those kind of roles. We need to see that. Now, obviously, Bill O'Brien doesn't need Ohio State. Ohio State needs Bill O'Brien.
Yes.
And that's the difference right there. But I do think that, push come to shove, I have faith that Ryan Day will make the right move if O'Brien opts to take that Boston College job. I really think he does. And, we'll obviously break it all down if it does happen, when it does happen and all that. Again, it's, I think that it's a sombering idea that you could look at Ryan Day and say he should have at least 2 national titles under his belt right now, right? Probably, right? You'd say
that the COVID team was special. I do think there was there was a lot of special there.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily blame Ryan Day for that team though. Like you said,
Alabama was a monster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that was one team that was one team that was very special, I think.
Yeah. And then the CJ Stroud in Georgia. Right there. But
that team, I'm not going to count that team because that team backed its ass into the playoffs.
Yeah,
they're still. If you talk to the rest of the country, they don't even think Ohio State deserved to be in that playoffs.
But when they went up against Georgia and they really gave Georgia the best game of the year.
That was the best game Ohio State played.
Even Kirby Smart said that was the championship. He even said that because we all knew that once TCU beat Michigan, it was like whoever wins that game is going to win the national championship, right? I mean, it was just like when Ohio State won the first one in 2014 against Alabama. Like that Oregon game, that was like one of the few games where not once was I like, Ohio State's going to lose this game.
Yeah,
even when it was somewhat close. I was they're going to pull it up.
If Ryan Day would have coached a if Ryan Day would have been a better coach, they would have beat Michigan and been the number 1 seed, right? And they would have been the ones that beat the brakes off of TCU and met Georgia in the national championship, right? So I mean, I understand what you're saying, but to me, I don't even count that season because they lost the they didn't deserve to be in the playoffs.
No, I get it. It sucks, but I get it.
But I'll meet you at the 2020 season. That 2020 team was good. That 2020 team was really good. And they got screwed. They got screwed a couple times. They got all beat up. If you remember, right before they played Alabama, they got beat. Justin Fields was hurt. Trey Sermon was hurt. It was just like, it's bad timing, man.
Yeah, it really was.
Yes, but that team was special.
Yeah. Let's talk about something else that's really special right now. Is Tim Walton's recruiting. Holy crap. We have found our defensive Brian Hartline. No, we've not. Tim Walton is an absolute heater on the recruiting trail. Let's just go over some of the commitments that he's had. The 23 class, he had Malik Harford. He had Calvin Simpson Hunt in there. And then Jermaine Matthews Jr.
Was it Malik Harford or Jermaine Matthews was the freshman All-American? Shoot.
Yeah, shoot is right. I think it's Jermaine.
Was it?
I think you're right. And Jermaine was the lowest ranked of those 3 guys. He was, according to the 247 composite, he was 148th. The other 2 were ranked higher than him. This past season, in 24, Bryce, Aaron Scott, I'm just going to flip their names. Aaron Scott and Bryce West, arguably 2 of the best corners to come out of Ohio. In a very, very long time, along with Miles Locker. And now in 25, oh my goodness, Tim Walton is doing some work. Devin Sanchez, number 1 ranked corner in the country. Naeem Offord, number 2 ranked corner in the country. Both top 6 players. You're looking at the potential of Fahim Daleen, a safety out of a Good Counsel in Maryland. Joining that group as well. I mean, we're talking about a group of 5-star defensive backs that are just elite. Like, I'm talking elite. I watched the film of both Sanchez and Offord. They could start right now. That's how good both of them are. They're long, they're athletic, they have elite ball skills, both of them. Offord can return punts. I believe from his junior highlight film that I watched, I think he had 3 punt returns for touchdowns. I mean, these 2 guys are just like top of the barrel. And the crazy part is that I saw a tweet, and I can't remember who tweeted it out, but I do remember the information. 1981 was the last time Ohio State signed a high school recruit of the state of Alabama. 1981. I was born in 1981. That's 42
was it Tom Moore who tweeted that out?
It might have been. It might have
because it was the guy's name was Went, right? Something Went.
I'm not sure who that was. I don't even remember him, to be honest with you. But
he didn't play.
Right, exactly.
He never enrolled
like
classes. He ended up going to Louisville.
that's how long it's been since Ohio State's gone into Alabama and gotten a
Yeah,
player. And not only are they getting a player, they're getting one of the best players in the country. I mean, Tim Walton, they're calling him OG Walt, all these, you know, Twitter things. It's like, with the glasses and you see the goat and then you put the glasses on, it's just Tim Walton, right? Like
yeah.
this dude is on an unreal heater right now. And you just have to give your hats off to him for what he's doing in the recruiting show now. He's the Brian Hartline of defensive backs right now. I wish that both of them would somehow be able to recruit the lines as well.
Right.
I'd like to see some elite linemen. Now Carter Lowe, let's be real here. Carter Lowe is one of the top offensive linemen in the country. And the Ohio, he's a Toledo Whitmer guy. He's ranked 31st overall in the country according to 247 Sports Composite. They're on a couple other guys that are top guys in the country on that side of the ball. So, I mean, the recruiting train right now is just on a crazy level. You can't forget about Blake Woodby, who's also committed. He's a top 100 prospect as a corner. Yeah. They have three top players at corner, and they're not stopped. There's other guys that are potentially coming. Dorian Brew, Ohio native. His father took a coaching job in Texas, so mid-season, which is
he's a legacy. His mom ran track.
Right. She was an All-American.
That's right. Yeah. So I don't want to say that that's a lock, but that feels pretty good.
It feels pretty damn good, And even with those other guys committed,
and McNutt too, right?
And McNutt,
he's a legacy as well.
Also a legacy. His father Richard was
McNutt,
went to school with Richard, so yes, and Richard he was a good player, not great. He was good.
He was in that Chris Vance, Bam Childress, like guys you remember, but they weren't like good. Talking about.
Well, they won a title, so I'm good with that, right?
That's what would make Chris Vance. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying. Like there was an era. There's always an era of guys that like were a little too small, a little too that like he probably wouldn't play today, right?
No,
but like
he probably not a hot state.
Antonio Smith kind of fit that, right? He played he started like 10 games for a Big Ten championship team. There was a whole crew of those guys that were,
But I mean, yes, like this secondary class in 25 could go down as arguably one of the greatest secondary classes in all of recruiting history, which is like absolutely nuts to think about. But Tim Walton deserves a shit ton of credit.
So let me ask you. I'll make one statement and then I'll ask you a couple questions. So my biggest, as you know, as I've said repeatedly, you are the recruiting expert. I am not. I have seen exactly 3 plays of a couple of these guys. Tavion St. Clair is right in my backyard, Bellefontaine, so I've seen him. I got a good understanding of him. Devin Sanchez, obviously we all had to watch him, yada, yada, yada. But I try not to pay attention to pen meets paper, especially in the day and age of the NIL. Right? You talked about 6 corners, 6 defensive backs roughly, right? What are the chances that they get all of them?
At this point in time, I think it's fairly high, actually. It's crazy to think, but
you think it's greater than 75%?
I do. The Fahim Delane, multiple crystal balls to Ohio State. Same with McNutt.
Let me ask you another question.
Same with Brew. Like they all look. There's a video that's circulating online about Tim Walton and Florida State quarterback corner. What's his name? His name is eluding me. And he said that Tim Walton's the greatest quarterbacks coach that he's ever coached that has been coached by. And I mean, when you get a guy like that giving you praise like that, it's hard to say no. It's hard to say no. And that's what they all say. I listened to an interview from Offord today that he actually said, he's like, look, it's like, why wouldn't I go somewhere where I can get coached by the best defensive back coach in the college and get me prepared for the next level and help? And not only that, from what I've read, and I don't know this at all, whether it's true, but it does seem like it. Tim Walton doesn't just care about you as a player. He cares a lot about you as a person. And I think especially for an 18-year-old to 22-year-old player, not just a football player, but also a person, I think that plays a huge part into it. Relationships, and we've talked about this. Recruiting's a lot about relationships because let's be real here. A lot of these guys, the Devin Sanchez of the world, and the Naeem Offers of the world, they can go wherever the hell they want, right? But they want to go somewhere where they feel comfortable, and they felt comfortable at Ohio State. And these guys aren't in state. Texas, Sanchez offered for help.
Well, before I make a similar comment on Walton, I want to go back to the Alabama thing. I agree with you. Back to my point. I'm not watching these guys, right? I'm not going to waste my time until they sign the paper because I'm little faith. But with that said, the fact that they're even making a move on a guy in Alabama, I want to try to explain to the listeners that might not be familiar with recruiting, because recruiting is so much more in depth than you realize once you're into it. But this is a type of guy that Ohio State would call an offer and then be done with and not have and realize that they don't have a shot. That's not the case now. So
Jalen Ramsey is who it is. I just to a quick Twitter search. Jalen Ramsey said
it. And I mean, because Tim Walton was with the Jaguars for a period of time. That was going to be my next point. But as far as Alabama goes, Nick Saban leaving really opens the door to recruit places like Alabama and Louisiana better, because Ohio State couldn't crack into there. And it's not just Ohio State, right? It's everybody.
Everybody.
They're just so locked in. There's just those are places that are very, I don't know, old school, right? Like you can go recruit in Georgia, you can go recruit in Texas, because some of those kids aren't from Georgia, some of those kids aren't from Texas. Alabama, Louisiana, those are families that born and bred and die there. So they're just
in the South, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like that's just what they live and breathe is Roll Tide. But so the fact that we're even making moves like that is impressive to me. But back to the Walton thing,
Well, real quick, I want to plug myself real quick. I actually wrote about when Ohio State got Caleb Downs, right? When Ohio State gave Caleb Downs, I wrote 5 reasons to be excited about Caleb Downs. That was actually one of my points, was that the door is open to the South. It is legit. It is legitly open. If you go back on Buckeyes Wire, yes, but like that to me, like Judkins was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school, wasn't like super highly recruited. Whereas you're looking at Downs, and Downs is like the number 1 safety in the country, arguably the top player in the country as well, and it just. Like, to me, that just, like, doors are open, and Ohio State's taking full advantage of it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I guess my thought was, I don't, the guys that transfer in, I don't necessarily count them as recruiting wins, but if those guys go on and have success and they have a good time at Ohio State, they're going to call those dudes. They have the potential to help. I'm not going to count them. I understand that. No one should, but they have the potential to help crack that door open a little higher, right? Or a little more wide open. 100%. And then the Tim Walton thing. Tim Walton was a former player at Ohio State, was on the Rose Bowl championship, the Rose Bowl team in 1997. He was not the best football player, very intelligent football player. That's kind of how he got away with what he got. That's how he saw the field at Ohio State, right? We talked about Richard McNutt and Chris Vance. He was very much in that same tier of athlete. But this is the guy who went on and had great coaching success in the NFL, was even a defensive coordinator for the Rams at one time. So if you don't think that this guy going in there and he's coached for 20 NFL teams and that doesn't play a role in that, you're stupid. And there's very few defensive backs coaches that have that kind of resume. I'm just throwing that out there.
It's another home run hire by Brian Day right there.
Let me ask you one more question, and then we'll cut this off. I know we're at 53 minutes, but I really want to get this question. Do you think, if you need more time to explain next week, this would be a good cliffhanger? You've talked extensively of Fry and his lack of recruiting. You seem more frustrated than I have. I was pretty satisfied, but because I think that offensive line is hard. But you seem pretty dissatisfied. Carter Lowe's from Ohio. Right. He's from Ohio. He's in your backyard.
Yep.
If he can't get Carter Lowe, is he fired? Like, I guess you can't fire him because of one guy, but like, is this right? Is that going to be one of the reasons he gets fired if stuff doesn't work out?
I think it would have been part of the reason. I mean, you look at, another school that he was, considering was Michigan. And like, we've seen Ohio linemen go to Michigan and have a lot of success. And we've seen Ohio linemen come to Ohio State and not have a ton of success. Like, there's plenty of guys that have play. Like Luke Montgomery is a great example. He's an Ohioan. He's
Right.
like, yeah, he's a freshman this past year, but they talked him up so much in fall camp. Like this guy was going to play. This guy was going to play. And then at the end of the year, they're playing Enoch Vamahi over him at the guard position. Like
Yes.
what is like to me? Look, I wholeheartedly understand that offensive line recruiting is literally the hardest spot to recruit because from a 16, 17-year-old body to project that out to 22 is very, very difficult. It really is very, very difficult.
But there are teams that do it well.
There are teams that do it well.
Hard. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when I say it's hard, I mean it's hard for me and it's hard for you because offense recruiting those guys and scouting those guys, you can't just turn on film because those guys are pushing when you can see speed, right? You can see size.
You can see athleticism. You can see power.
And you can see a lot of that stuff with offensive linemen. But 90% of your offensive linemen, even the 3-star offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they're just fucking bulldozing guys.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's harder for you and I to gauge that. But there are guys and coaches in college football that can identify, hey, this is the kind of this is the size of ass I need. These are the kind of ankles I need, right? So it's not. I want to be very clear. We're not making excuses for Justin Fry. It's just from our standpoint. Yeah. That's how offensive linemen and defensive linemen appear.
All right, I got a good, quick little story about this, and then we can probably call it an afternoon. So. I work for a TV station out here in Chicago, and we do high school basketball games. We do high school football games as well. So last year I got a chance to see Justin Scott play football, and Justin Scott obviously committed to Ohio State, flipped to Miami, right? This past weekend on Friday, I got a chance to cover a basketball game where Justin Scott was playing, and I got a chance to talk to the athletic director. And one of the things that stuck out in my mind when I saw Justin Scott was, I don't really think he's a defensive tackle. I actually liked him better as an offensive lineman because he just looked like an absolute bully from there, right? And so we were talking, and guess who went into that high school and tried to get him to commit as an offensive lineman?
Who?
Nick Saban. Nick Saban saw exactly what I saw. I see a mauling dude who's got elite athleticism from the position who could just be a road grader as an offensive lineman. Wow. And the reason why he didn't consider Alabama was because they wanted to make him an offensive lineman.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. Yeah. And like I did scouting for a year, and I watched a ton of high school prospects, and I watched a lot of guys, and I know what a good offensive lineman looks like. Now, let's be real here. Illinois doesn't produce a crap ton of those type of guys, like Miles McVay, who actually ended up going to Alabama eventually. I liked Miles. I didn't like some of what he did. And Miles is sitting there, I think he played a little bit this past year, and maybe he develops a little bit more as he gets older, but he's huge. He's just a big dude that it was hard for other linemen to get around him in one-on-ones. And I didn't actually ever get to see him playing a game live. I did see a couple. East St. Louis won a state championship his senior year, so I got a chance to see that game because I worked in the studio for that game, so I watched that one. But there's just I just didn't think he. I thought he was a little bit overrated. I didn't think he was a 5-star prospect, which he ended up being. I just think, and looping back to the Fry part of it.
Yes.
I don't think that he's going after guys that have a high enough ceiling. He's going after more potential. When I'm recruiting, if I was a recruiting coordinator for offensive linemen, I want guys that have a high floor. Because if you have that high floor, you're still going to be solid players. He's going after guys who have much lower floors but higher ceilings. And I think that is not the right way to go about recruiting that specific position. I think you need to go after high floor guys that that can contribute to your program, even if they're not superstars, but are going to be solid linemen, as opposed to a guy that's a 3-star that might develop into a dude. I mean, 2 years ago, they took one offensive lineman in the class. right? This past season, Luke Montgomery was the best one, but they got a bunch of or 2 years ago they got a bunch of 3 stars, and then this past year was a bunch of 3 stars as well. I want those high floor dudes. I want those 4 stars. I want those 5 stars. We need those type of guys.
If you get the 3 stars, I mean, DeJuan Jones was a 3-star. I don't care.
DeJuan Jones. If you watch his highlight film, his high school highlight film, I have no idea why he was ranked.
But that happens all the time.
I think it's because he was in Indiana.
Yeah, Midwestern linemen, offensive and defensive linemen are under recruited. So if he snags a bunch of 3-stars, I'm cool with that. But they've got to play, they've got to develop, because them talking about Montgomery week in and week out, and then you put Trot and Vamahi out there.
Yeah,
that's an issue to me. That's an issue to me, right?
It's development. It's development.
That means that they basically lied to us.
That's how I.
Yeah, and I'm not crapping on Vamahi either. Vamahi was also a former 4-star, 5-star guy, and the development has failed him. I'm never going to blame the player. I'm never going to do that. And the development has failed for Vamahi. I'm not ready to give up on Justin Fry, but there are, you've kind of said it. You kind of opened my eyes to it, and I've heard some others complain about it too. And that is something to monitor. He's another guy that needs to be monitored this year.
Yeah, I think so. I think
the on-field talent.
I really think it does. I think this year's a big year for him. I think if he doesn't produce in both sides, on the recruiting and on the field, I think it's time to move on. As great as he was and Bill, I just
because Donovan Jackson and Matt Jones got worse this past year.
Yes, they did. They did. And Fry is average. You look at
Fryer.
Fryer. Fryer. I'm sorry. He's average. You look at Tegris Shabola, who's
sat the bench,
a mountain of a dude. Should have been playing. He's better than he should
be.
That's what I'm talking about. You've got guys on your roster that can play and who could start on the majority of other teams.
Even playing them against Youngstown State.
Right, exactly. What's going on here? There's no line rotation. There's no specifically, and I hate to do this and I keep doing it, but Michigan's lines, they prepare 10 guys every season because they know injuries happen. They know some guys won't perform at that high level. They get 10 guys ready. Ohio State gets 6 at most.
But again,
that's not good enough.
I'm not going to blame Justin Fry for that.
Why not, though? Why wouldn't
Ryan
you blame
Day does that? That's a Ryan Day thing. He doesn't rotate his receivers. He doesn't get the backup quarterback ready. You pick a unit, and I'll show you the 3 guys that are going to play and never rotate it. You said it yourself with Julian Fleming. They don't rotate anybody, and when they're blowing people out, they don't put anybody in there. I was hoping that was going to be one thing that Bill O'Brien brought over, because Alabama, that team rotates guys.
They play everybody.
Yeah, and when they blow people out, the backups go trotting out. But that's one of the issues, though, is that Ryan Day don't blow anybody out until the 3rd quarter or the 4th quarter. By then, it's too late. That's part of the problem, because Ryan Day is the king of winning by 3 points going into halftime.
Yeah, and again, you look at this past class, the 24 class. You have 1 player in Ian Moore that's recruited that's a 4-star, and everybody else was 3-stars. Everybody else, like Gabe Van Sickle, good, but he's a 3-star. You just look at the Armstrong brothers, good, but again, they're 3-stars, and that's it. You brought in 1 4-star guy who's most likely going to play in the interior. Ian Moore, I don't see Ian Moore as the tackle.
I agree.
And then you're bringing in 3 projects after that. The 25 class, how many commits do they have right now that are offensive linemen?
Just low, right?
What? Low. And I you kind of think low was almost a given, right? Like you said earlier,
if Low from Ohio and Michigan's in disarray.
Right. If Low didn't commit, then there's definitely something wrong. So
I think so.
I really think that when you look at the grand scheme of things, especially when we're looking at specifically the offensive line, I need to see more production out of that unit, because some of these guys have been again, it's just like quarterbacks. Some of these guys have been in the system for 3 years, and they're not ready to play. Why is that?
It's alarming.
The onus falls on their position coach. That's, I think, one of the reasons why Corey Dennis was ultimately he was let go. He was kind of softly let go, but he was let go. He was demoted, and then obviously now he's gone, right, off to Utah. And I think that's kind of what we're looking at with Justin Fry. I think that he's eventually going to just, he's going to get that. I wouldn't say even a demotion. I think they should straight up fire his ass. I've had enough.
You're ready to fire him right now,
yeah.
huh?
I've been ready to fire him after the bowl. After the bowl game.
Wow.
I mean, I thought something like was actually going to happen because his contract expired at the end of last month.
See, I'm
are they waiting till after signing day, which is tomorrow? I don't know. Shit. I really don't know. But at this point in time, you kind of think like he ain't good enough. It's time to move on.
Interesting. See, I'm willing to get. See, I guess we disagree on that one. That's one guy that I'm willing to see what's still happening.
I'm good on him. We need like someone who's going to develop guys, and we're just not. I mean, Paracelsus Jr. is elite dude, and I think he would have been a first round pick anyway.
I would agree with that.
Anywhere, like
potential, yeah,
literally anywhere. I mean, look, Luke Whippler left, and he was an undrafted free agent. Big Thanos.
Luke Whippler? No,
was he drafted? I thought he was
because the Browns draft. I don't know. They drafted him late, but he was definitely drafted.
Maybe okay, really late.
Right?
Should he have left?
Maybe I'm wrong.
But should he have left? I mean, either way, should he have left? No. Like DeJuan Jones.
Was weird.
Like DeJuan Jones. I remember I saw him in the 19 Big Ten championship game, and he was outrunning corners. He was outrunning corners down the field blocking. I mean, like that's the kind of guy that you need, and that's the kind of guy that should be playing a lot. And yes, he did play a lot, and I give him that. But again, they played him out of position for a season as well. Why play? They played they played 4 tackles his junior year. Like, what the hell are you doing? Like, that's just bad coaching. If you're gonna play multiple guys, you keep them at that position, you help them progress throughout their course of time, and then you go and have them split time because they're good at it. But that's not how he did it, and that to me that bothers the crap out of me.
I agree.
Don't put players that are out of position who need to learn, just like Jack Sawyer trying to play the jack position 2 years ago. Like, that was a disaster. Jack Sawyer did not look like a 5-star. Look at what happened when he put his hand in the dirt this year. He looks so much better. And he's going to I think he's going to have a huge senior year because he's back in his natural position and not jumping around, trying to learn something else. Because as much as we think that the tackle guard is interchangeable, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's totally different. It's totally different. You have to recondition your body to do something completely different. And that to me is bad coaching. It goes back to that's not putting your players in the right position to succeed, and I don't think justifies me.
I agree with those statements. I'm just trying to be more patient with the guy, but I agree with those statements.
Not me.
So far, nothing that he has provided has been impressive. So I agree with that statement. You ready to shut down? We've been talking for an hour.
I'm good. I think we're good.
All right. I do want to add, an Ohio State legend did pass away today.
Oh, yes.
In Ken Fritz. Ken Fritz was a starting All-American guard in the 70s. Ohio born and bred, was an All-American 1979, was 1978 Ohio State Offensive Lineman of the Year. He was best remembered for holding back Woody Hayes after Woody punched Charlie Bauman at Clemson, but he should not be best remembered for that because he was one of the best offensive linemen in Ohio State history. Unfortunately passed away today. Anybody who knows him knew he was a fun person to talk to, was very, very pleasant to Ohio State fans. One of the guys that was always at autograph signings and would say hi and tell you stories for days. So he has passed away today. So I wanted to at least give a shout out for that.
And let me give a quick shout out as well to Clay Hall. He retired today. Clay Hall, if you didn't know, huge presence in Columbus, covered the Buckeyes for the last 20 something years.
Forever.
Forever. He retired today. So thank you, Clay Hall. Congratulations on your retirement. Well deserved. His Buckeye coverage has been absolutely fantastic over the almost 30 years. I think he said 29 years that he's been with the station with Fox 28 in Columbus. So we hate to see him leave, but he's earned his retirement. He's done a fantastic job.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right.
All right, man. Well, make sure you follow our work at Buckeyes Wire, and you can follow me on Twitter at Josh Keatley16. We'll try to go. We're going to move this to Wednesdays and try to live stream it again. But that's it for me.
Yep, and that's it for me. Also, read my crap over there at Buckeyes Wire. It's not crap. It's actually good stuff. It's good stuff. I put out some good stuff. I'm as Josh says, I'm big on recruiting. I love it. I've always loved it ever since I became a Buckeye fan. That's one of my favorite things to do, and getting an opportunity to get paid to do it has been absolutely awesome. Thank you, Phil, for giving me the opportunity. Patrick as well. I appreciate that. I'm coming. This past year is my first year, full season covering Buckeyes football, and as you know, Josh, I pump out that ton of content because I love it. I absolutely love it. So
yeah, you are the king of content. That is for sure.
So go ahead and read our stuff. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm not super active on there, but I do tweet every once.
You've been picking it up. I've seen your head pop up quite a few times.
I try
when I'm on the toilet scrolling around.
I try here and there, but give me a follow over there at Mike M. Chen. And that'll do it for us today. Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.